In the centennial birth year, I asked people to write stories, this time from Greg Rittenhouse. My earliest memories of Aunt Blanche were at the Thanksgiving and Christmas family get-togethers. She and Aunt Bernice often commented on how Jim and I stayed the same height as we grew up. Sometimes I had to stand side by side to verify it. I recall Aunt Blanche saying cheerfully, "Yep, still the same." In the 1940s and 1950s, Aunt Blanche told stories of incidents when men came to her house asking for money, food, or work. These were the hitchhikers or people who rode the rails and lived in freight cars near the Ocoya grain elevator. She never turned anyone away, and I remember her saying she made a sandwich for one man, even though he hung around longer than she felt comfortable. She often was home alone, which made the situation potentially risky. The only time I saw Aunt Blanche unhappy was one Thanksgiving or Christmas when the family gathering was at the Ripleys and Grandma Phillips fainted in the kitchen. She was sitting down and slumped over on the kitchen table. One of the uncles, probably Uncle Raymond, picked her up and put her on the living room couch. She soon regained consciousness, but Aunt Blanche felt badly because it happened in her home, and she thought it was because it had been so hot in the kitchen. The only one-on-one conversation I recall having with Aunt Blanche was a few months after I got out of the Army in 1962 and decided to drive out to the Ripleys one Saturday afternoon. We sat in the living room and she listened with interest while I told her about my Army experiences and my job in Chicago. Uncle Raymond came in from outside and joined us later, and Aunt Blanche commented that we had been having an enjoyable talk. Another Saturday afternoon in the 1960s, Brother Norman and I were on his motorcycle on a gravel road a few miles south of Pontiac when we saw Uncle Raymond and Aunt Blanche ahead of us. We were traveling pretty fast. Editorial comment, note Norm was driving, and they must have wondered what was going on when we pulled alongside of them. They stopped, and we had a short chat, trying to make ourselves heard over the sound of the engines. Aunt Blanche said to Norman, "You sure do look like a Phillips." Greg also wrote some comments about Ray, which I'll add here. Ray was not only tolerant of, but very friendly to his younger cousins. Brother Norman and I greatly enjoyed being around him and often campaigned for him to visit, particularly on winter weekends. One time was recorded on our movie camera and showed us riding our sleds hooked to the back of the Jeep in the golf course and sliding down the hill at the sewage plant. Another Saturday afternoon, we went to Funk's Grove and later to Bloomington. Dad and Mother went to the car dealers and probably had Marilyn with them because she was so young. The rest of us waited in the car, and Ray kept us entertained. On the drive home, Ray kept the whole family entertained with his jokes. I remember my parents laughing at one of them. "Who is buried in Grant's tomb?" The Phillips reunion was held every summer in the Chautauqua Park, and once or twice Ray and I were chosen to arrive early on Sunday morning to stake a claim on several picnic tables. There wasn't much to do, but with Ray as company, the time went pretty fast. Like Cousin Jim, I thought that the highlight of visiting the Ripleys was crossing Route 66. Walking across where there was a stoplight near our house was dull by comparison, and spending time in the village of Ocoya and visiting neighbors. Like many other teenagers, Ray used to drive to Pontiac and ride around town in the evenings, and we frequently saw each other during those years. Sometimes we just honked and waved to each other, and on other occasions we stopped to talk. We also both frequented the roller skating rink, and Wednesday night were the usual times I saw him and Janice there. I saw Ray a few times as an adult, once at his house, another time at an evening Rittenhouse Ripley picnic in Chautauqua Park, and finally a big family get-together just after Christmas at our house. The last time I saw him was completely unexpected. He was briefly interviewed on the evening news. A reporter went to Pontiac to get a farmer's view on some situation or event which affected them. Needless to say, it was quite a kick to see him on TV.